All right, welcome back. As you can see, we're here on the inputs page. And remember from when we checked the Explorer pane that the used range here was extending outside of the print area or outside of the financial model. This is something a little bit suspicious. We'll want to investigate just to make sure that there's not something lurking in there that we weren't aware of. Let's check it out. Now, the first thing that we'll want to do is bring the Explorer pane back up. So for us, that's Alt, U, and E for the Explorer pane. And you can see it comes up on the side. We can easily use the mouse and click on here, Inputs. And we want to click the print area just to see what's intended to be printed. Then if we click on the used range, we can see it's expanded out to the right-hand side, which as we mentioned, is a little bit suspicious. So let's tap Alt, U, E now, close that down and investigate. Now, just so you're aware, the other quick way to check where the used range ends in a financial model is to just tap Control End. And as you can see, the cursor jumps to cell U47, and this is the bottom right-hand corner of the used range, which can be really handy. So we obviously can't see anything on these columns off to the right-hand side, but perhaps somebody put some white font in here. So we could hold down the Shift key now and highlight across, and then highlight all the way up to the top. In previous versions of Excel, this would have shown us the white font, but what we're going to do is change the fill color with the fill color cycle. So Control-Shift-K, just like this, and all of a sudden the white font jumps right out. So now we can see exactly why the used range is stretched out to the right. So let's travel up to these cells now, highlight them, and use the blue-black toggle Control semicolon to just change them to black font so we can see them properly. Now that we've changed them over to black font, let's zoom in a little bit with Control-Alt+, just so we can see exactly what we're dealing with here. So you can probably guess what we're going to do next. We need to know if this little area that we're highlighting is connected into the model. We can do that by testing all the precedents and all the dependents. So what we can do now is press Control-Alt right square bracket to test the dependents, and we get a confirmation no dependents found. And now Control-Alt left square bracket for the precedents, and again we get a confirmation no precedents found. Perfect. So we know now with certainty that this area is not connected to our financial model in any way. So let's clean things up now. We're going to select across. We're going to hit Control Spacebar to select these entire columns. Alt H H N, which removes the fill color. Now, while we still have the entire column selected, we can tap Control minus, which is a shortcut to delete the columns. What's going to happen now is when you save the file and reopen, your used range should reset to a smaller area that just includes the financial model. So this was great. Remember, the Explorer pane helped us to identify and locate that hidden and the buried tab. And here the main takeaway was whenever you see a used range, which is outside of the financial model or outside of the print area, you really need to investigate, because in this case, we saw that there was some white font lurking in there that we wouldn't have otherwise noticed. So join us in the next video. What we're going to do is talk about and set up the quick access toolbar that's going to allow us to move really quickly with some really interesting Macabacus visualizations for model auditing. We'll see you there. So let's look at another powerful visualization from Macabacus. Magnitude map is actually perfect for evaluating inputs. It's going to look across each row individually for us and compare the relative size of the inputs to make sure that there's no anomalies for us to investigate. Let's jump in and take a look. Now the magnitude map is actually loaded in right here. So it's going to be, as you can see, Alt-2 on our keyboard. So what we're going to do is head down to the bottom section of this input page and just select cash from operations and cash from investing to start. Now that these are selected, we can tap Alt-2 on our keyboard. And this dialog comes up. With financial models, we're going to want this second option, usually to analyze each row in the section individually. Let's tap Enter to make the magnitude map come on. The first thing that we notice is it colors green for positive numbers and red for negative numbers. But the other thing that we can take note of is the shade of green is not changing across here, indicating that the numbers are not getting larger or smaller. Similarly, the shade of red is not changing, so those numbers are not growing or shrinking either. So these numbers actually look fine. Let's tap Alt-5 to clear the visualizations. And now we're going to select cash from financing all the way down to unlevered free cash flow and tap Alt-2 in order to analyze the magnitude map again the same way. There's a couple anomalies here that we should probably mark. Right here, we can see this dark red cell. Let's hit Control-Shift-K to change the fill color really quickly. And down here, we have a green cell, Control-Shift-K again to change the fill color. Now that we've marked the cells, we can hit Alt-5 to clear the visualizations and then investigate these anomalies. You can see that this line here is the payment of dividends, which is always a cash outflow, as we can see here. So this last cell actually looks like an error. So let's grab this cell and then just fast fill right like this to fix it. Now if we move up here, we can see that this is the credit line issue or repay. Credit lines can ebb and flow, positive or negative, so this one may actually be legit. Let's just remove the fill color, Alt-HHN, and proceed on. So let's move up to the top now to investigate these income statement inputs. Let's select all of them just like this, and Alt-2 for the magnitude map, and again, we're going to analyze each row in the section individually and hit Enter. Now this can be a lot to look at all at once. You want to remember that you're really looking across each row separately. So we can see here, revenue's increasing, costs are increasing, SG&A is also increasing. This looks normal to us. What we see in this next row here is other expenses of $2 million, but then at the end we have a negative expense. Let's just flag that with Control-Shift-K to change the fill color. What we have next is a stable forecast for depreciation. That looks okay. Interest expenses decreasing as the company's paying down the debt. We've got a stable forecast for current tax, but here there seems to be an anomaly for the deferred taxes. Let's mark that, Control-Shift-K to change the fill color as well. Again, we can hit Alt-5 to clear these visualizations, and then we can investigate. Up here for other expenses, it does look odd that there's a negative expense, so this is likely an error. So let's highlight across and Control-Shift-R for a fast fill right. And down here on this last row, we can see that the person likely intended to forecast 2 million, but keyed things in incorrectly in that one cell. Let's highlight across again and do Control-Shift-R for a fast fill right to correct this one as well. Let's just run the tool again now that we've corrected some things. We can highlight all the way down like this and Alt-2 to run the magnitude map. And as we can see, it's looking much more consistent now that we've cleared those out. Alt-5 can quickly clear up the visualizations. As we indicated, this magnitude map can be really effective for inputs. We may not have seen these anomalies if we were just looking at the numbers, but the magnitude map really helped us to identify the large anomalies in these inputs. Let's hop into the next video and check out another powerful visualization from Macabacus. So using the AutoColor tool, as well as the functional map in that last video, was really helpful for us to locate some partial inputs and some inputs on the income statement. And now we're at a stage where our income statement is actually looking great. All we can see is green and black font, indicating that we only have formulas and worksheet links on the income statement. But what we need to check now is formulaic consistency. And by this we mean we're going to check across each row to make sure the formulas are consistent from left to right. Let's jump into it and get started. So let's check out how a standard installation of Excel might be able to check for formulaic consistency. We're going to start off by selecting all the way across the revenue forecast and all the way down to earnings before tax. What we do now is tap the F5 key on our keyboard, which is a go-to command. And now we use the tab key to get down here to click Special. So we're going to Special Areas in the model. For formulaic consistency, left to right, we're actually checking row differences. The computer can also check column differences down one column. But in this case, we want row differences across from left to right. So let's hit Enter. We get a confirmation that no cells were found. That's an indication that we have perfect formulaic consistency from left to right. Now, usually with a financial model, you're going to be checking row differences across from left to right. And the way that this tool works is it always compares the area selected back to the first column that's been selected. So this means that the computer is really comparing the formulas in here to this first formula. And it's also comparing for cogs these formulas back to this formula to make sure that they're consistent across each row. So now we're going to ask you to please select across the revenue forecast and extend the selection to the bottom of the income statement. Let's check the row differences again. So now F5 on the keyboard, now click Special, and then across here to row differences. And one thing to keep in mind is that row differences has a dedicated shortcut. It's Control \. In column differences, the shortcut is Control Shift \. So now let's escape out and try that shortcut. Control \/ for row differences. And what we see is the computer has found one row difference and it's automatically selected that cell down below in the deferred tax line. Now let's hold off for now on marking this cell orange because in a moment we're going to show you a powerful Macabacus tool that can locate this row difference for us. Now we mentioned a moment ago that we can check column differences using the native Excel shortcut Control Shift \. Now there is a Macabacus shortcut that may conflict with this. So we're going to look in the shortcut manager in a second here and show you how to disable it if you'd like. So if you think you'd like to use that native shortcut for column differences, then what you want to do is hop up here into Settings, and we're going to click Keyboard and click on the Shortcut Manager. When it comes up on the right-hand side, you can just click down a couple of times on the scroll bar, and that gets you into the Auditing section down below. What you're going to do now is click right here where it says Last Audited Cell to deselect that. And then we can close the Shortcut Manager just like this. Let's do a quick demonstration now to illustrate how these two native Excel keyboard shortcuts can work. If we could go up here, and if you could please head across to column G, and we're just going to link to revenue, and then we're going to use a fast fill right, which is Control Shift R, and a fast fill down, Control Shift D, to fill these cells in. Now these cells should have no row differences from left to right, but let's check. With Control \, we get a confirmation that this is true. They should also have no column differences from top to bottom. So Control Shift \, will check this for us, and again, we get a confirmation that they're perfectly consistent. So what we can do now is just tap the Delete key to clean up the model. I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. If you didn't know about Excel's ability to check row differences and column differences, then you've learned a new skill. Now in the next video, what we're going to show you is a tool called Formula Flow, which essentially leverages the row and column differences functionality and adds a layer of visualization onto the model, which can be really helpful. We'll see you over in that next video. I hope you enjoyed that last demonstration with row differences in particular and the ability to check across a model from left to right. This is really critical with model auditing because what you're going to see is that we really are only going to audit one column, the first column, in detail and audit it manually. And then we're going to get the computer to check across from left to right. Now, we're going to leverage row differences here by using a Macabacus tool. It's called Formula Flow. And what it's going to do, which is so helpful, is it's going to put a layer of visualization on top of the model for us to show us all of the row and column differences, if there are any. Let's jump in and get started. So we can see that Formula Flow is right up here in our quick access toolbar. And if we tap the Alt key, we also can see that it's going to be Alt 4 on our keyboard. So let's go over to the income statement and select the whole thing right down to the bottom line here and tap Alt 4 on our screen. We can see that it's put a visualization up on top of the model. So at first this may look a little busy, but really what we're looking for is horizontal and possibly vertical lines. For instance, if we were to select all the way down here, you can see that there's perfect horizontal lines all the way across. This is indicating to us that there's no row differences in this area of the model. So now let's stay focused on these horizontal lines. We can see down here in current taxes, we also have horizontal lines all the way across, indicating that there's no row differences. But in the deferred tax line, we can see in the second cell, we actually don't have any horizontal lines. So this is an indication that there may be an issue here. Let's mark this cell just with Control Shift K, which is the fill color cycle, so we can follow up on it later. Now, if we continue our search for these horizontal lines across total tax and net income, we can see perfect consistency left to right, i.e. no row differences. So let's just tap Alt-5 on our keyboard now to clear the visualizations. We're going to investigate this orange cell. So let's start off and investigate this deferred tax line here. We're going to start in the first cell. If we tap F2, we can see it's connected to inputs K18. Now let's just escape out for a second. We do not want to have to go to the inputs page and find cell K18. So we can leverage a native Excel shortcut here, and we can tap Control left square bracket, which takes us to the precedent cell. And here we can see we're connected to deferred tax 2023. Looks fine. Now instinctively you'd think to get back, you should hit Control right square bracket. But in fact, to get back, you're going to need to tap F5, Enter on your keyboard, just like that. Now let's move over to the next cell in 2024 and use the same shortcut, Control left square bracket, and now we can see the issue. This is actually connected to deferred tax in 2023. So let's tap F5, Enter, just to get back to this cell. So we have a situation here where the first formula is correct, but then the second formula is incorrect. So we can just go to this first cell and hit Control-Shift-R, which is a fast fill right, to copy the formulas across. So it's always a good idea to check our work. So let's actually go back up to the revenue line. We're going to select the entire income statement again and tap Alt-4 on our keyboard to run formula flow. Now what we're seeing is perfect consistency left to right, no row differences at all in the income statement. Now that we've checked using formula flow, we can just tap Alt-5 on our keyboard to clear the visualizations. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Checking for row differences left to right is really critical in financial model auditing. It really allows us to take an approach where we're going to check down the first column in detail and then use the computer to check across from left to right, which is going to save us a ton of time. Let's hop into the next video and start talking about how to thoroughly check down that first column in the model to make sure that there's no issues with it. We'll see you there.